Hello, my name is Zaid. I'm a blogger. I've, I write quite regularly, and I'm interested in this subject and of press freedom and the quality of journalists that we have. So that's why I'm here. Good afternoon. This subject is obviously an important one, and I think this conference, this meeting here in Malaysia is very timely, because Malaysia, as you know, is a great country, but it has some serious flaws. And in one area that I want to talk to you is this area of press freedom, the area of where we should have a better sets of journalists, better sets of laws, better sets of code of ethics, better sets of owners of the media. I don't know what's our ranking, but I'm sure it must be low. And I'm sure for a country of our potential and our strength, we don't deserve to be ranked so low. Just like our football team should be ranked higher. We don't deserve that. We are in the first world league. And yet you look at the journalists, or you look at the press today in our country. We're still going to court to answer the question whether the government can refuse a permit to publish. In other countries in this world, there are no more countries like that, except North Korea maybe. We still have to get a permission to print, to publish. Of course, the case is coming up at the highest level. Chances are good that the court will say, yes, you don't need, or rather the permission which should be given. But that's where we are now, a very basic level. That's one. Number two, I admire journalists. When I was young, when I was growing up, I remember this Vietnam War very vividly. This massacre of My Lai massacre. And I remember this guy, Seymour Hersh, I think his name, this journalist, American investigative journalist, how he exposed this great cover-up of the killing, indiscriminate killing of civilians in Vietnam. And it took him a lot of pain, a lot of abuse, a lot of threats. And Seymour Hersh persevered. And as a young man, I thought, this is great. But I didn't have the skill to be a journalist, so I ended up being a lawyer. But that's another thing. But I admired people like that, courage. And you have seen many more journalists all over the world who gave their life for this honorable profession. I can tell you, there are many names in India, Indonesia, or even here at one time. They took it seriously. And I always tell my son, if you want to do something, you better be serious about it. You must like it. You must want to do it. Otherwise, do something else. You don't be a journalist to take orders or to be cari makan, we call it in Bahasa Malaysia. You be a journalist because you want to do the right thing for the community, for the people. You want to convey the right information. You must have that strength of character. So to answer the question, what is the best protection for journalists? It's themselves. Only society can protect them, the people, but they must be worthy of protection. They must stand up. Because otherwise, do something else. Be a corporate lawyer, whatever. And this is the point that I want to make as far as Malaysia, in the context of Malaysia, and I'm sure we live in a time of a great extremism now. I have lived long enough in this country to see that we are getting worse. It's not nostalgia I'm talking about. I'm talking about people cannot even say something without offending somebody else. It's crazy. We live in an extreme time. Religion has become, well, people tell me, people have become more religious now. I say no. Because religious people are tolerant. Religious people are peaceful. God-fearing people never do harm. Mandela is a religious man. I am a religious man, but a lot of people don't think so. But, yes, but people use words like that. Oh, in Malaysia now, we are more religious. It cannot be. We heard accusations, we attack people, we are angry about the smallest thing. You know, we don't want to talk. You look at the Facebook, you look at the remarks they made against me. You know, look what Ibrahim Ali said about me. He says, Zaid is drunkard all the time. You know, he drinks 24 hours a day, you know. Well, but that is from a Muslim leader. You see, and we have other examples. I don't want to bore you. But what I'm trying to say is this. We live in an extremely delicate, sensitive time. Extremism is on the rise. In Malaysia, it's just not between Christians and Muslims, you know. I mean, in Myanmar, it's Buddhists and Muslims, you know. And in Indonesia, it's Muslims and Muslims, you know. And in Malaysia, it's Muslims and Shia and Muslims, you know. I mean, the permutation is endless. So what, in this challenging time, it's more important you have the right kind of journalists. In a peaceful time, in my time when I was young, maybe less, you know, the demand is less on journalism, I don't know. But especially now. You know, you cannot write something that, oh, we might upset somebody. And I mean, I know Bob Teo talk about conscience clause. I think it should be the right conscience clause. I mean, it's a difficult question. Because you can be motivated by something that you call conscience, but it's all totally wrong, totally dangerous. I'm sure a lot of fellas who kill somebody else. You know that guy in England who killed that army officer? He said he did it because God asked him to do it. It's his conscience. So I'm very wary about this thing. You know, I think we should be guided by ordinary principles of good behavior. Let's start with that first. Let's be truthful first. Let's be fair. I know fairness you can argue, but at least there's some idea of what is fair. Fair is this. If you were to do it to me, would it be okay? Would it be fair if the same thing that I asked of you, you do it to me? If you pass that test, then you're fair. So I think journalism in this country needs that. Certain codes. But it's difficult to enforce because the top leadership sometimes don't understand fairness, or don't understand or don't want to implement it, don't want to teach the people. It's more important you win the election. The leadership principle must start from the top. The newspaper owners are owned by politicians, you know. I mean, the newspapers are owned by politicians, you know. So if politicians don't have the right values of fairness, how do you expect the newspaper editors to be fair? And then it goes down. How do you expect the journalist who has to do his work assimilate the same values? It's difficult. So I would say what this country needs for the best protection of journalists is that higher-ups also accept these principles and the right values for the country. And not for some esoteric reason, no, not for some moral. It's a practical tool. When the country is guided by the right values and the right principles, you get the people to be happier, more productive. You don't spend time arguing over nothing. You address the problem of society, you move the nation forward. So I'm not talking about some, moral dimension to this. These are practical issues. If journalists be allowed to do their job, then there will be less corruption, there will be less. The reports of the Auditor General will be thinner, the machinery of government will be more efficient, the right people will be promoted, everybody wins. So, but why are we not doing it? Because, for the moment I think, because we tolerate this nonsense. So I would urge the journalists, you start first. You want protection, you want respect, you must do your job properly. And I think that is very, very important ingredient. I would like to propose, if it is all possible, I know this code of ethics, I agree with Bob and John, and I think it should be done, and it should be embraced by the top leadership. I hope you people go and see the Prime Minister and tell him to initiate it, and everything will be done. But also, I think you should have an index for this country. This country loves index. You know, every time, like, of course, they will only talk about the good ones, you know, like ease of doing business. Oh, we are better than Indonesia, so they talk about it. We are better, we're just slightly lower than Taiwan. And then, of course, there's index for transparency. Then, of course, we are not so good, so they don't talk about it, you know. And then, of course, the index for corruption and so on. But whatever the response, they care about what people think. So I would propose that we have index for our newspapers. I'm interested to know how would Utusan rank vis-a-vis Kompas. I would be interested to know how would Bangkok Post compare with Jakarta Post. I would be interested to know how Utusan and the Star compared to the Singapore version of the Straits Times. Because if you measure these papers by those yardsticks, the criteria that are accepted and established, and it doesn't answer all the questions, it doesn't tell all the stories, but at least, if our newspapers rank somewhere below Myanmar Times, then something's wrong with the country, surely. They got 69 years of military rule. So we cannot compare with Myanmar, we must compare with, you know. So I feel there should be an index. And then my last suggestion, do I have enough time?
Have,
I have, okay.
You have minus 1 minute.
Okay, I would like to suggest, I sense that in Malaysia context, okay, although you have unions, Bob, you correct me if I'm wrong. You have unions, you have groupings, but they're not active. That's what my feeling. You know, I'm not a journalist, you know, I'm just a blogger. But I would like to see that you have some pride in your group, your work, your friendship, your camaraderie. If you are not going to defend yourself, what protection do you want? So I was, you know, it's kind of sad that, you know, there was this managing, oh no, he was the president of this union of journalists, the Malay fellow, what's his name? Wata. You know, he was abused, he was sacked, he was left. You know, he was the president of the journalists of this country. And he was sacked. He was humiliated. They threw nasi lemak at him. And what's the response? Zero. I had coffee with him. You know, I couldn't do much. I could buy him coffee. But it's pathetic. Here you have this honorable group of people, profession, and do nothing when one of your kind get treated that way. What has wrong with our country? Oh, at least our journalists. So, I would like to end on that note. You know, you must treasure this profession, this journalism. You must want to protect it yourself. You must want to make it better. And for your own self-worth, you must want to make it the best that you can give for the country. Because you're on a mission. Otherwise, sell nasi lemak or do some property development, do whatever you want. But if you want to be a journalist, be true to it. Thank you very much.